Before starting on the main body detail, I kind of checked over the whole thing for any imperfections. And the only major thing I found was a pretty good sized bump in the casting right there, so I filed that down and sanded it smooth, so that'll look all nice and uniform once it's painted. And other than that, the rest of the body looks pretty good. And next up is the handrails. These are made from 0.015-inch brass wire, and I'm using a number 77 drill bit in the Dremel for the body. And one thing I'm doing different with these is I'm leaving them loose. I'm not going to glue them in place until after I've finished the painting and decaling. So one thing I've found is that when you have a lot of details like these on the sides, if you're going to do any masking or decaling, they really get in the way, so it's best not to put them on until after that's done. Alright, I've finally gotten all the tiny holes drilled for the handrails and grab irons. It took about 3 of these little bits to do it. I was using oil for each hole, and even with that, these tiny bits, they just wear out and break real quickly. Fortunately, they're only $1 each, so it's not too much of a cost. But one thing to remember when drilling metal is to always use oil. It makes the drill bits last a lot longer. Another little detail I added is the frame bell. As you can see, the Hobbytown frame has kind of an angle to it instead of a flush curve to fit into the body, so I couldn't drill a hole to get it in the correct position. So instead, I filed a little recess into that part of the frame and glued the bell onto there. And that seems to be holding all right, so that should look just fine once it's all together. One interesting thing about the unit I'm modeling is that the real one actually had a reverse light on it. So I made that by drilling a hole and putting a piece of brass tubing in. And then there's a little micro bulb in there right now just to show what it'll look like when it's done. One major detail that was missing was the rear door. So there was just an open space there to see through to the gear tower and everything. So I've made my own door using just some sheet styrene stuff. Very soft, easy to work with. And the door handle is made from some flattened copper wire that I bent and glued in place. So that'll look a lot better once it's all assembled. Alright, I'm just about done with the grab irons. These 2 down here, these lower ones, are flat instead of round like usual, so I took the regular brass wire and actually flattened it out in smooth jawed pliers, and then just bent it and cut it to shape, and those turned out looking pretty good. And then for these back here, I found out that they actually won't be interfering with any of the decal work or anything, so I went ahead and glued them on. But the rest of these long ones, I'll leave them off until the painting is finished, just to make things easier. Another new detail I put together was the rear pilot there. It's just a couple simple pieces made from sheet styrene, and I don't know how close those are in size to the real ones, but I just made them based off some photos, and it's better than having nothing. They'll be covered by some other details, like a couple grab irons and the MU hoses, so that should look pretty good when it's put together. Well, that's looking better. Just have to do a few more details on the back and then the horn, and I'll be pretty much done with the detailing. So I don't know if I was looking in the wrong places or what, but I could not seem to find the horn that I wanted for this thing, until finally I just ran across this Tyco junker that I've had lying around for a while. The horn that was left on there was exactly the size and shape that I wanted, so a little bit of modification, it fit right on there, and it'll look pretty good once it's painted. So, oddly enough, it was Tyco to the rescue for finishing the detail on here. One thing about Hobbytown diesels is that the fuel tank area is always completely open, and they never really do anything for the cab either, so it's just a lot of open, empty space that looks pretty unrealistic. So I'm going to go ahead and make just a simple interior and fuel tank out of styrene sheet. One of the really nice things about working with this stuff is that it's just so easy to work on. The only tools you really need are the razor and a ruler. And then for simple parts you can just make a score mark, and then from there it's just real easy to break that into the pieces you need, and it's nice and clean too. Okay, I've got the back wall and the floor all cut and shaped and fitting real good. So I've got those sitting in there right now in the position they need, and I'll just put some liquid plastic glue on that joint. And once this dries, I'll make some extra structural support in back to make sure it doesn't lose its shape. After some time and more testing, I found that the belt drive I made for this little thing wasn't working out. Kept seizing, the belt was stiffening. So I decided to replace that with a gear drive. I got these gears out of an old CD drive, and they seem to work pretty smoothly. It's noisier than the belt drive, of course, but it still shouldn't be any louder than the rest of the engine, so I don't think that'll be a problem. This way it'll be a lot more reliable. I won't have to keep doing maintenance on it to keep it going. I got the interior together now. The detail isn't spectacular, but it fills the empty space, and you really don't notice the inaccuracy when the thing's moving anyway, so I think this will be just fine. Last detail I put together is this fuel tank. Now, it is hollow, so again, not entirely realistic, but at least you won't see the track underneath so much, so this will definitely be an improvement in how it looks. Alright, all detailed and ready for painting. Won't be long now before it's done, and it looks like it'll come together pretty nicely.